Good morning.
Hey, good morning or afternoon, wherever it is, right? What time is it where you're at?
It's 2:30, almost 2:30. So you can kind of see the afternoon light, right? You can feel the warmth of the day. How are you this morning?
Good, good, actually. It's not too warm here today. It
Good
is
morning,
not too
Sarah.
warm here.
Does it feel like fall already? Like, have you
Good
guys turned the
Yeah,
morning.
corner?
it happened pretty fast, actually. It went right from like summer to pretty good feeling fall. Yeah. Chilly
Same.
nights, chilly mornings. I didn't
Yeah.
know what this was going to be like, so I stayed home. I didn't know if I needed a space or room or what. So
That's a good point, and I should have been more clear because Mike asked about that too. You can do it anywhere, really. I mean, we'll do some short practices. So
okay.
it's good that you're home, I think, because then you're in a comfortable space and you're not in a cafe or something where you feel like you're self-conscious if you're trying to do a practice. But the office works too, given that we work for a mindfulness company. Good
Okay.
morning, Paula. You're muted, but I
I
love
got
your
my new
planner.
notebook, brand new.
Awesome. Overachiever.
Nothing
That's
better than a new fresh
right.
notebook.
I was just
Yeah.
a blank
Oh,
first
it's the
page.
best. I feel like that's writer crack a little bit. Like you got your new first day of school notebook ready to
Yeah.
go.
Yeah.
Great.
Student crack. I love
Student.
being a student.
Yeah.
It's the best thing.
Well, we were just talking about how it feels like fall there. And this morning it was 45 degrees here too,
Yeah.
which is the coldest it's gotten so far.
Yeah,
But
that's
now
cool.
it's like 63 and sunny. So it's that strange like shoulder season when you have 4 layers on in the morning and then by 4 o'clock you're peeling them all off because you're sweating.
Sarah, I'm laughing that both you and I are wearing like these cozy turtlenecks today.
It's like a turtleneck day. Yeah. I had a different one on and I was like, I'm going for like the cushy one because it's
I have to say, I'm really excited for that season when you can basically like hide in your clothes and just get completely immersed.
Yep.
Yeah, I like this season for like maybe 2 days. Then I'm ready for summer again.
Yeah.
I love my flip-flops.
I feel like there's something to be said for the fact that as the seasons turn, you're always ready for the next one. Some of us sooner than others. But I don't think I could ever live in a place like Albuquerque, New Mexico, where it's always hot and sunny. Although I guess they get cold at night. But there's something about the seasons that I really like. So we are just waiting on Mike. I'm going to double check that he didn't email.
okay.
But
Rach, when will the new house be ready?
We won't really know until they're supposed to give us contractually 4 months notice. So the estimate is somewhere between July and November, but because we're in Switzerland, they're doing everything on time. So right, like where else in the world does the construction get done almost like ahead of time? So I think we're planning July-ish.
Cool.
So sometime next summer. Yeah, we'll
That's so
see.
exciting.
That is exciting. Yeah.
It's feeling real now as we pick out the countertops and things like that.
Oh, that's so fun.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's a very real motivator in all of this because we have 2 years now, actually less than 2 years, to pass a language test so we can get our C permit, which is like a green card.
Mhm.
And so once we get that and we prove that we have enough Deutsch to function, then we can own a home here and rent it out. So if we would get transferred somewhere or Rob's job would take us elsewhere, we could still keep it. But if we don't get that, we have to sell it. If for some reason we have to go back to the States or something. So we're feeling the language pressure coming on. And it's good because we should be learning German after, moving to another country. I feel like there's something that is respectful about making a real effort. So when we went to Paris on the train over the weekend, Rob had his flashcards with all his Deutsch and we worked.
You took
That's
a
fun that you
class
get to learn
last year, though.
together too.
I know, that's very sweet.
That's help. Like, I
And
feel
we're
like
all
that's
doing
helpful.
it together. Yeah. And I
Yeah.
really love actually too that Duke sees Rob learning something new and being a student, and that Duke is working on the same thing. So we're
Mhm.
all kind of in it together and we work on the Deutsch as a family. So
It's
it's
great.
fun and awkward and frustrating and, all
It
of
is frustrating. You think I've been
So hard.
using that Duolingo app, and
Yeah.
you get comfortable with the level or lesson you're on, and you're like, oh, I've got this. Like, you get real cocky, and then they
Yeah.
add like one new thing, and you're like, I'm never gonna learn this. This is impossible.
That's right. We're all doing this streak on Duolingo now. So I'm at 238 days. I'm very proud of that.
Ooh.
And Rob is at 26, so he's doing great too, because he's a lot busier with work. So we're getting there, and it feels good. Talk about practice and mindfulness to take that time every day, even if it's 5 minutes while I'm waiting to pick Duke up from school, and do the German, because you do feel like you are making progress every time you do it. So it's just like meditation that way. I feel like I want us to start so that I honor your time, but I'm also conscious that Mike isn't here yet. Sarah, do you think I should drop him an email?
I can text him, right? That might be.
If you have his text, that might be good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know he and I were in the office together yesterday. We spoke about being excited to be here. So I know he's well aware and was planning on attending.
Oh, he just entered. We're good.
Oh, great.
Yes. Perfect.
Okay.
And then that's everybody, because Jen was hoping to pop in, but she just emailed that she can't make it. So it'll be the 5 of us.
Oh my God, Sarah, out your window is so gorgeous right now.
It is. Are you in the office or are you at home,
Yes,
Sarah?
no, she's in the office.
I'm in
Yeah,
the
it's
office.
beautiful.
Yeah.
Good morning, Mike.
Hey, Mike.
Good morning.
Hi, Mike.
Nice to see you.
You too, Rachel, and everyone else. Sorry, I
Hi.
got hung up on the way in, and that's nobody's fault but my own.
No problem. Mornings are their own speed. So I get it. There's lots of grace around that. So this is everybody. And Jen is hoping to pop in now and then when she's able to, but she won't be able to come today. So I think we'll just get started. Does anybody have anything you need, or do you have any questions before we kind of move into the slideshow?
Now ready to roll.
Oh, ready, go right ahead.
Cool. Just so you're comfortable, you have coffee or tea or whatever you need. If you want to have a pen or a pencil and a notebook, you might like to have it. But the beauty of this is that you can just kind of come as you are and just show up ready to receive, like bring your empty cup. You might have wanted to chug the coffee first and then bring that empty cup so you can fill it. But it's pretty easy in terms of what you need to do. So I'm going to share the screen and then pull up the slides because I find them helpful in learning some of this material together. So let's see if this will work. Okay, you can see my screen, yes?
Mhm.
Yes.
Now I'm hoping I can still see all of you once I present. Perfect. Okay. So here we are. Mind, Body, and Breath, which is our fancy name for the Studio B signature series. And as we move through this together, I want you to really place yourself in the shoes of one of our corporate students or one of our nonprofit students or an individual who decided to take this course as a self-led online learning opportunity. Because that's really what this series is about. It's really one of the first things that was birthed when Jen and Sarah first launched Studio B, and it has been one of the most consistent aspects of what we do since January 2019. So this is an opportunity for you to soak it up, to ask lots of questions, and to just really start to feel familiar with the foundations of everything else that we offer at Studio B, because everything else that we do really comes out of this. So a bright pink welcome to you all. Sharon Salzberg shared this morning, and I thought it was so perfect. She said, we don't meditate to get better at meditating. We meditate to get better at life. And that's why we're doing all of this, not to become pro meditators who can sit for 2 hours on a cushion, because for many of us, that's not an option. We do it because when we practice mindfulness, when we practice meditation, it affects everything else we do. And it really eases its way into every breath we take as we get the groceries, and as we parent our children, and as we sit in terrible traffic, and as we deal with a plane that's just been canceled. So what we're doing here is practicing getting better at life. So your mission, should you choose to accept it. So be gentle with yourself. We have 8 lessons here, so I'm hoping that we'll be able to fit those in 8 weeks. But as we move through those, just let the spirit of gentleness really inform everything we do. Stay open, stay curious, stay flexible. We talk about flexibility a lot when we do yoga, but flexibility is really at the heart of any mindfulness practice, any meditation practice, is learning to be even more flexible. So let that also be a part of this experience. Think about maintaining a sense of wonder. And don't take yourself too seriously, or any of the things we're going to talk about. In Eastern wisdom traditions like Buddhism and Taoism, there is a general sense that when you're really getting close to a flash of enlightenment, or a moment or two of enlightenment, you are becoming more and more childlike. So our goal in doing these practices is to kind of unravel some of the tensions and the contractions that adulthood has brought to our lives, and to peel off those layers and come back to who we are as an open, curious, flexible, lighthearted child. And that means being quick to laugh. It means not feeling self-conscious if we have a question that we wonder if it's a stupid question or not. It means really being gentle and holding our sense of ourselves with lightness, knowing that it's always changing. So everything else that follows from this, I encourage you to hold these 6 things in that spirit.
These feel very much like everything we do at Studio B, from our communications to how we are experiencing working with our clients. Sarah, we need to make this a great big poster for the office.
Yeah.
I hope so. It's funny because reading this, I thought to myself, God, I'm so not flexible a lot of the time when I think I'm right and I don't want to change. So, we could talk about things and also be really aware of the ways in which we fail to do these things every day. But I like that idea, Paula, as like aspirational, that these are central to the work we do. And if we can embody these things too, I think that's a great way, for somebody in sales. Sean, if you're open and curious and you have a sense of wonder and you don't take yourself or Studio B too self-seriously, that I think is a great embodied way of selling our product, because you're showing all the ways in which this has transformed you and made you more gentle and more light and more present. And Sarah, I feel like I interrupted you earlier. Did you have something to say?
I don't think so. Oh, okay. No, I was just imagining one of those, like cat posters that you would get with the book sales. They hang in their posters. We could
hang on the
one of those.
I was thinking a LinkedIn post, by the way.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
oh, this would be a really good LinkedIn post.
That's a great idea. The
Coming
marketer
soon.
always at work. Yes. Paula, I thought of you as I made these slides because they're not perfectly branded to Studio
I
B.
know. That was my
So-
first. I'm like, Rachel, you have to change the
I
color.
know. So, but I had to pull up the Google Doc options, which are limited, so it was this, or it
Oh,
was
yeah.
like black with teal green
Oh, okay.
comets or whatever. So let's put on our list to brand these Studio B. I figured since it was just an internal training with all of us who are already a part of Studio B, it was okay if it wasn't perfectly on brand, but that's a good to do. Maybe I can connect with you and Sarah to get those before we do next week's.
Definitely.
So moving on from there, we come right into lesson 1, which is the introduction to mindfulness and the notion of establishing an anchor, which all sounds very official. A brief little orientation. I'm going to give you guys kind of the shorter version since you're familiar with Studio B already. But each lesson that we'll move through, and there are 8, it contains information, practices that we'll do together, and opportunities to share and ask and learn from each other. And one thing we do a lot at Studio B is talk about relationships. And Jen says, the relationships we cultivate are an asset that other mindfulness training companies don't have. And that is something that really is one of our strong points, especially as we have teachers who work with clients for months at a time. We're building relationships, and the work we do is relationship based. So please consider this an extension of that this is a conversation. This is an opportunity for us to learn in relationship and to learn from one another. I don't know any more about this than you guys do. Like, we're all teaching each other from our own lived experiences, and there's so much wisdom that comes from those. So please really consider that an open invitation. The lessons are designed to make mindfulness meditation really easily accessible. So whether you are totally new to this stuff or you've sat at a meditation retreat in Italy before, it should be available to you. And over time, we hope that they will help you become mindful in all areas of your life. So think about committing to a spirit of beginner's mind, which is very much what we talked about in the last slide, talking about a spirit of gentleness, of openness, of flexibility. This is beginner's mind, the idea that whether you're a professor of Eastern religion or you have never sat for a meditation practice in your life, we're all coming with a spirit of willingness to learn and an eagerness to discover everything we don't know. And then finally, of course, experience it with a spirit of curiosity and have fun. Whoops. So think of this as a conversation. As I said earlier about relationships, this is a conversation between you and your body. It's an ongoing conversation that might shift over the course of these 8 sessions, but it might also be the start of a conversation that continues the rest of your life. Think of it as a conversation between you and your breath, maybe for the first time. Think of it as a conversation between you and your mind, as a conversation between one another in this Sangha that we'll create on Thursdays, and a conversation between us and the world, because mindfulness is also about the relationship that we have with our bodies, with our breath, with our mind, with one another, but also with the entire world out there. And so what is mindfulness? I would love, I'm going to throw us over here for a minute, to hear popcorn style. What do you think of when you hear the word mindfulness? They can be stereotypes, they can be pop culture representations. What are the first things that come to mind?
Slow
Meditation.
eating.
Say it again.
Go ahead, Paula.
No, you go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, slow eating.
Slow eating, yeah.
Meditation.
Meditation is the first thing that comes to mind for me. Or slow walking, like the image of slow walking.
Yeah, I see meditation / like a yoga room.
I see lots of images from mainstream media of like a lady sitting in meditation in a yoga space, or, several of you said the word slow, definitely things, maybe even annoyingly slow, like dramatically mindful, or the stereotype of a mindful person who really looks you in the eyes and never pulls their eyes away from yours because they're so present in the moment. I think mindfulness in pop culture has changed dramatically in the last 40 years. You know, in the 60s and 70s, it was meditation was something that hippies did, and it was not mainstream at all. In the 70s, teachers like Sharon Salzberg, whose quote we saw earlier, and Jack Kornfield from Spirit Rock, and Joseph Goldstein were in their 20s, early 20s, and they were some of the first Westerners to bring meditation and mindfulness meditation to the United States from India. And even then, it was a very fringe thing, but that was the first step toward really normalizing and bringing mindfulness and meditation into the mainstream, which of course, now it truly is. I think a turning point was around 2010 when a lot of mindfulness books started to emerge, and mindfulness books that really were written by 20-somethings writing about what it's like to when the Buddha walks into a bar, for instance, and taking mindfulness and meditation and landing them in the stuff of 21st century life. So what is now ubiquitous was not always that way. And I think that's important to remember as we come into this training, that until the last few decades, meditation, mindfulness in the West, in America in particular, it was really a very fringe movement, and probably not something you'd tell your parents you were doing. But it has become this household word. So it's really important to know how mindfulness is defined for our purposes, and there are lots of different ways to define it. One way that we're going to use is that mindfulness is the moment-to-moment of awareness of what is here and now, without it having to be anything other than what it is. And this is a definition that lives on our website. That's how committed we are to that. And Jen received this definition from Sarah and Ty Powers. So it's the moment-to-moment awareness of what is here and now, right here, without it having to be anything other than what it is. So we're not resisting it. We're not trying to change it. We're not denying it. We're not wishing it away. We're just accepting what is in this moment. So there's a Sanskrit word, neti neti, that means not this, not that. And it's used a lot in yoga philosophy, and it applies to mindfulness meditation as well. And what we use the word neti neti to describe what something is not. And in doing so, we discover slowly what it really is. So mindfulness is not clinging or grasping to what is, saying, oh, this is an incredible moment and I never want to lose it, so don't let it pass. Mindfulness is not resisting what is, saying, no, this can't be possible, that could not have happened, being in denial about it, so not denying what is right now. Mindfulness is not working to change or manipulate or control what is. It's not living our lives in rumination or regret about the past, which most of us are really good at doing. Mm-hmm. And I would argue is the normal state for most of our minds, thinking about what happened yesterday or what happened 20 years ago. I often use the example when I'm teaching in yoga class. At the end of class, we'll sit and do a meditation, and over and over, I think about the one bad date I had in 1999 with Dave Yocklin at the Deer Park Tavern in Newark, Delaware, and how awkward I was. And I ordered a Diet Coke, and I was so awkward. I mean, this is what our minds do, right?
Right.
Yeah. And I cringe. I'm sitting there in meditation. I'm like, oh, I blew it. Right?
Yep.
And that was 22 years ago. So this is the beauty and the miracle of our minds, is that they're entirely capable of yanking us out of this perfectly okay present moment and taking us back to that difficult moment or that awkward moment, or sending us into the future. So I've often heard that depression is when we get stuck on rumination about the past or what was, and anxiety is when we are locked in to fear about the future, right? And I know very well that feeling of worrying about, well, what if this, what if that, what if that? And I think as humans, probably we all are quite familiar with that too intense sensation of fear or expectation about what might be. I think it was Mark Twain who said, so many of the worst things in my life never happened. Because this is the nature of the mind, right? And it's normal. And this is where the gentleness comes in. Because even in those moments, if we could catch ourselves in rumination about that one thing that happened last week, or worry about what might happen tomorrow, we can pull ourselves back with tenderness and begin again. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. So finally, mindfulness is not being lost in worry or fantasy or excitement about the future. So what is mindfulness meditation? It's really just a style of meditation. There are so many different styles. In our training, we're going to deeply explore 4 different parts of mindfulness meditation. Mindfulness of the breath, which is what we're doing today. Mindfulness of the body, which we'll spend a few sessions on. Mindfulness of feelings, and mindfulness of mind. So things get progressively a little more complicated. And this is distinct or different from other styles of meditation, although there is always lots of overlap. But mindfulness meditation is highly varied and flexible. It's adaptable and it's accessible. And this is why Studio B in our for instance, in our marketing materials or our social media or our investor pitches, we talk about what we do as mindfulness, because it is so varied, it's so flexible, it's so adaptable, and it's accessible. It can have 1,000 different faces. It can look like cooking, it can look like running, it can look like yoga, it can look like Zumba, it can look like conscious parenting. And so this is the umbrella that holds all of those different modalities that Studio B features. And there's a reason for that, because we want to keep ourselves flexible and open to offer sound healing and nutritional, practices and things like that. So on that note, have you ever practiced yoga, walked through a forest, sat quietly on the beach, run, swim laps, or had another physical practice that was meaningful to you? Maybe sat in the full presence of suffering with someone you were losing, or maybe been with a child when the baby was born. If you've done any of these things, then you've already experienced mindfulness. You've already glimpsed it, you've already felt it, you were in it all the way. Sometimes that's the clue that we're really there, is that we're so in it that we're not even conscious of anything else. When you're swimming your 400th lap, you're not thinking about your grocery list necessarily. You're thinking about the next breath because your body's getting tired. When you are in the room, when your daughter or son is born, you're not thinking about that awkward date 20 years ago. You're right here with what is happening in front of you, like literally the next breath. So this is mindfulness. And this is what we're looking to tap into more, because we're 100% capable of experiencing this full presence in this moment-to-moment awareness. And sometimes we glimpse it, but those moments are fleeting. And so we can train our minds to access that more frequently. Paula, yes.
So my husband, who's an English professor, Mike and Sean, if you didn't know that, he calls reading his meditation, which makes me crazy because I disagree, but I just wanted to hear what you thought about that.
That's tricky, because I get it, because I feel that it's like the flow state, right? I feel that when I'm reading too. Right. But what's complicated about that is that the mind is involved.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So I can see how he's in his flow state, but probably the meditation police would argue that he's not completely in the moment because his mind is still hard at work.
Yeah.
Yeah. That would be a really interesting question to ask somebody like Jack Kornfield or Sharon Salzberg.
Okay, next time we talk to them.
Yes. Or Philip Moffat. We should ask him that when he's here on the 22nd. He would
Okay.
be a great one to ask. Yeah. Can you all think of any other examples like this when you are like in the flow or in the zone?
I get like that when I write sometimes.
Yeah, I was gonna say when I journal. Yeah.
I'm entirely the walk through the forest type.
Yeah.
And I genuinely seek out, at least, if not daily, every other day, an hour or two to myself, just walking through the woods or by a stream. And it was sort of a discovery on happenstance, right? It wasn't intentional. I just realized, I start feeling better when I do this.
Yeah. Yeah, there's some, like, my journaling hour in the morning is a non-negotiable. Like, if it doesn't get done, then I actually get, like, I feel a sort of anger about it, and then it definitely impacts the rest of my day because I didn't get to do the one thing that I really wanted to do in the day. So I don't know if that's a mindfulness practice, but it's something that definitely sets the tone. And it's kind of a selfish. I call it my me time.
I love it. I mean, this tells me everybody already has a mindfulness practice. So you're already experts at this.
So I have a question, because something that has been curious to me from when I first spoke to Jen back in like July or August, and it came up here again with what meditation or mindfulness is not: clinging to, resist, denying, working to change, manipulate, or control, ruminate, regret, worry, fantasy, excitement about future. And I realized, well, I'm all of that. Like, I'm every one of those things, especially the working to change, manipulate, or control. And not only things in my life, but in the lives of other people around me, because if I have the power to, or the influence, I'm going to try to fix things for people. And I find myself in a constant state of thinking about those things. So I'm super interested in learning how to not do that, but then have like a follow-up question. So, like, what if that thing is impacting the way I feel daily, or is a trigger for some sort of anxiety? Is it a balance between accepting that and working on the issue, right? Because there's got to be some kind of work on the problem in order to solve it. If it is, an ongoing, mental health trigger, is what I'm thinking. So I'm kind of curious how this will all play out.
Well, I feel like you said the key word, which is accept, because before we can deal with anything that brings discomfort in our lives or dissatisfaction, we have to accept this is how things are right now. And so, Jyoti has been saying lately, there's this great phrase: with things being as they are, where can we go from here? What can I do about it now? So there's a two-part response there. So rather than pushing things away or denying that they are what they are, you accept that they are. And it's okay to have the impetus to want to change that. One of the key words we use in mindfulness is noticing. So we really get rid of the idea that anything is good or bad, whether it's a thought or it's a way you feel in your body, or it's really anything. Good or bad is this sort of duality that doesn't serve. And so rather than saying, for instance, you wake up really hungover because you had 3 tequila shots last night, and you wake up and you feel terrible, rather than saying, oh man, I made a terrible decision. I can't believe how stupid I am. I never should have done that 3rd tequila shot. You say, oh, isn't this interesting? I'm noticing that my body feels really crummy. And I think next time I'm going to choose not to do that. So there's noticing without judging. And so even when we can accept and say, yeah, I accept I feel crappy this morning, from there, we can still take a conscious step into making a different choice. So your mindfulness is tied up with your response and your reactivity versus a conscious response. And we'll get into this, but I think that's really central, is the noticing rather than the judging or beating ourselves up. And that's where the gentleness comes in. And that once we notice, then it's okay to work for change. It's okay to want things to be different, but we have to first accept that things are as they are.
Okay, that makes sense.
And we'll talk a lot more about that. Yeah. You know, another worry I hear from people sometimes is, well, if I just accept everything as it is, then I'm just complacent. And then how do you ever have the impetus to change anything, to change the world, if you just accept that things are as they are? But you can, for instance, accept that life is as it is, and at the same time, it could be better in this way, and then work toward that. But there's a consciousness to it that isn't always there when we're in a sort of state of churning, pushing, maybe running away from what is right now.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Great question. Okay, so some of the benefits of mindfulness meditation, and most of you know these, but these are actually really helpful for someone like, actually for Mike and for Sean, as you are the face of Studio B to other folks who are outside of the mindfulness world. So there are myriad benefits, and this is something that has really hit the mainstream. You're going to find this in all the major newspapers and magazines. And this list is not comprehensive at all. This is just sort of a toe in the water. So I'm going to put you guys up here. Well, maybe not. Okay. So mental benefits, clarity. We have increased clarity. We have improved mental agility, better problem solving, enhanced creativity. We can better tap into our creative process because we're more present. We're not worrying about what happened last night or what might happen tomorrow. And more mental space. Think about a time when you have been really stuck in fear about something that might happen. Were you able in that moment to create anything? Did you have much energy to produce new work or show up to the best of your ability in that moment when you were feeling kind of hamstrung by anxiety? I know for me, it's very hard to produce anything creative in that state.
Categorically, no.
Yeah.
There's a saying in German, genau, which means exactly, genau. So I agree. So emotional benefits and better emotional regulation. And I feel like this emotional category could be 3 pages long because there are so many emotional benefits. Emotional agility. This is also known as resilience, the ability to bounce back, and an enhanced capacity for joy, love, compassion, empathy, and connection. And these things all sound kind of soft, but it's quite amazing how literally training these muscles to appreciate things like the precious quality of our time together, or the brevity of our lives, or the magic of a moment when you're walking through the forest, how it can change your experience of being in the world. In terms of health, oh, go ahead.
My kids would, when they were younger, I guess I was younger too, would notice days that I didn't practice yoga, and they would say, "Mom, go practice yoga."
Gotta love it, right? It's that
Yeah.
clear. Yeah. I'm glad they knew that they could say, go do it.
Yes.
Because you'd be a better mom by doing it, right? And that's exactly why our tagline is self-care is collective care. Because when you do your yoga practice, you're a better mom. Because when we do a meditation practice, we're more present for the people in our lives. We're better able to regulate when our emotions go haywire. We're feeling better in our bodies. So we're more present in everything we do. We just have so much more to give, and that ripples out. So in terms of health, mindfulness can improve the heart. It can improve your immunity, bring you increased body awareness, and help you be more attuned to your bodily messages. really fine tuning the messages your body is sending, and you are much better able to receive them and really decode them. And then finally, in terms of professional benefits, we're more productive and more effective. And this is a big selling point for lots of corporate mindfulness programs, saying, okay, train your military with mindfulness, they'll be more productive members of the armed forces. But it's true, we get more work done when we're more present and when we're less distracted by sort of the mind wanderings that are so normal and human. We have greater clarity in goal setting and better attainment. It helps us to create a thriving work culture. Think about working with people who are open and childlike, and well, hopefully not always childlike, but you know what I mean, who are open and gentle and creative and flexible and present. That's an ideal workforce. You can do a lot with people when they're in that state. Creating more deeper and more productive interpersonal relationships. And I think that's a big benefit of this training that I hope, Sean, you'll experience too in doing this, like just for us to have 8 hours together to talk about these things. It is incredibly intimate. And it really shows up when a corporate client brings this into their office and their employees are able to use this as an opportunity to get to know one another and build that camaraderie as well. And then finally, on our website, we advertise less drama. And this is another way to think of it, but it's true. A workplace that's steeped in mindfulness practices will have less drama because it's less reactive. So stress. Another common sort of question we get is, well, what about stress? Maybe stress isn't all bad. Maybe stress is what motivates me to get a lot done. So we want to look at the difference between work-related stress and the kind of chronic stress that goes too long without being managed. The kind of chronic stress that can give you a heart condition or that can give you high blood pressure, that literally has a physical manifestation in your body, versus the stress of a project that's due tomorrow. And then you're going to find relief after you pass that in. So all stress is not bad. It's a normal part of being human. And it's actually, in a sort of evolutionary perspective, it's very useful. It could keep us alive. It can alert us to danger and propel and motivate us forward and keep us moving towards something. But these practices can act as a preventative strategy. So it's kind of like putting a lasso on some of that stress so that it's more under our control instead of running all over us. So it becomes a method of self-care in that regard. And so in that way, mindfulness practices can transform our relationship to stress. So it's not going to make stress go away. And I think that's one of the downsides of the mainstream media coverage of mindfulness these days, is it's always this impression that as long as you meditate or do yoga, you're going to have this blissful, easy, peaceful life all the time. And that's not true. Stress will always be here. We will always experience suffering because it's a part of being alive in a body. But these practices are going to help change how we respond to those experiences of suffering, how we respond to moments of stress. And that's the key. And that's how we see the implications of this practice really ripple out into our lives. So the breath as anchor. So think of a boat in your favorite harbor, and it's the ocean, and sometimes a hurricane blows in, and sometimes it's calm and still, like in the morning, and that boat is just gently kind of rocking. But when Hurricane Ida blows in, that boat is getting ripped up and tossed all over the place. Your breath is your anchor for your boat. The anchor prevents that boat from being sent adrift into the middle of the ocean, right? On the wild seas. When we use the breath as an anchor during meditation, it can assist us when the mind begins to drift, which, like we talked about earlier, is totally normal. It's our mind's job to think. And in some ways, it's evolutionary too. It's our mind's job to think about, how am I going to pay the bills tomorrow so that my family has enough to eat, or so that I have a place to sleep. This serves a function. However, the breath as the anchor can bring us back when we get stuck in those drifting thoughts and start to sail away. So the breath is with us from the moment we are born, and it remains with us until the moment we depart. This is quite remarkable when you think about it. Sharon Salzberg, who we talked about earlier, talks about the breath as the ultimate mobile device. So you have it when you're standing in line at Starbucks and you're feeling stressed about the presentation later today. You have it when you're laying in bed and you can't sleep because your mind is ruminating on what happened earlier. It's always here, and often we take it for granted. It is our most trusted and truest and most loyal companion. We're never without the breath. And I think the last year in particular has shown us the power of the breath, with COVID being a respiratory illness and there being really an experience of great suffering around the breath across the world because of people's inability to breathe. And we saw a similar, I think, understanding of how central the breath is in the George Floyd murder, when this and Eric Garner saying, I can't breathe, I can't breathe. It's been a really visceral expression of how central the breath is to our ability to thrive, to literally our ability to stay alive. And it's an important resource for us to anchor in when we feel stressed or overwhelmed or angry or reactive or totally emotionally engulfed. So it's that place we can return to when we feel like we're drifting away on the rocky seas. So the nature of the breath, one way you can think of breath is it's like the life force. And across cultures, there are different words to describe it. In Chinese medicine, it's qi. It can also be written as qi. In yoga, we talk about it as prana, the life force that runs throughout the body and keeps the body moving, the life force that leaves when we die and take that final breath. So without breath, there is no life. It's central to our vitality. It's central to a steady mind. It's central to the healthy functioning of our organs, glands, and major body systems. It's central to the quality of our blood. And it's central to brain function, which lends clarity and focus and learning, memorization, and emotional regulation. So it's truly central to everything we do and are. How often do you take your breath for granted? I know I do it all the time. I'm guessing most of us do. Until the moment when we can't breathe, right? So our bodies breathe themselves, which is remarkable. We don't have to think about it. When we're unaware of how the breath is working, we lose working with us, we lose the potential for the breath to work for us and in our service. So it's this great resource that is often untapped. And there are really skillful ways to work with the breath, which leads us to pranayama. So pranayama is a Sanskrit word that refers to a mindfulness practice a variety of mindfulness practices that involve the conscious and skillful use of the breath. So using the breath as an anchor, whether it's in seated meditation or some pranayama practices are like in a yoga class, they're designed to build heat or fire, to help energize. Sometimes they're designed to help us calm down. They can serve a variety of purposes. So the parts of the breath, there's the inhale, okay? And the function and the purpose of the inhale. The inhale nourishes us and all internal systems and organs and glands, etc. It energizes the central nervous system so it can restore clarity and alertness and energy. And it can heal the battering of the central nervous system due to stress. So you can really think of the inhale as an opportunity to nourish every time you take an inhalation. And the exhale, its function and purpose is to release toxins from the body, literally carbon dioxide, bye-bye. It's the key to keeping us well. It's an opportunity to let go every single time we exhale. It releases the emotional burden and overwhelm. Think about all those times when you take a great exhale. I read someone talk about the post-Zoom call exhale, when you log out and you go, ah. And I was like, I know that. I totally know it. And I'm an introvert. So I think for me, I feel the energy of that more because that a Zoom call tends to make my energy decrease as opposed to an extrovert where a call would make it increase. But it's the biggest exhale of my life when I log out and go, so, there are other moments of our lives too when we do that. Maybe you've had a hard conversation and you get in your car and close the door and whatever it might be. Just think about the ways in which that exhale shows up in your life, even if it's unconsciously.
Wouldn't that
It
be a
provides,
lovely Zoom feature? That when you click leave, it exhales for you?
Or it posts, don't forget to exhale.
Exactly, yes.
exactly.
It's instructive.
It is kind of nice to think about after you log off. It's like you let go in that exhale of everything that just happened on that call. It's like fresh start, let it go. It really provides a release or relief, and it calms the nervous system when we can exhale in that way. This is also why, like in yoga, we do lion's breath, which is a kind of pranayama. And teaching kids especially, they love it because it's fun and you stretch your face, but you take a big inhale and then you do, and it feels so good. And you stretch your face and you get rid of any energy that might be kind of stuck in your body. And I find that even after I've been in line at the post office for a long time and I get in my car, one of those lion's breaths is useful. It's really good for kids too, to give them a tool to kind of move their frustration or their anger. Okay, so there's a space between the inhale and the exhale, and it's a rest. You can think of it as a respite or a sanctuary or a little refuge. And something to think about, maybe over the course of the next week, is how to become aware of the space between the inhale and the exhale, and the space between your exhale and the next inhale. In particular, that space at the end of the exhale is magic. If you can lengthen it and find a little stillness there, a beat, before you start the next inhale, it's going to automatically calm your nervous system. So when the breath is consistent and regulated, the nervous system is both energized and calmed. So we're creating a perfect balance. You think about a moment when you're really frightened and your breath, what's the quality of your breath in that moment?
Short. Fast.
Yeah, short and fast and shallow, right? And so think about that in that moment when we're already breathing that way, it's exacerbating, excuse me, the feelings in our bodies that already feel anxious, because the quality of the breath is making that even more fearful. So in a moment like that, if you can calm your breath and slow your breath, you're going to find that's a nice tool to handle a challenging moment. And it's easier said than done. And that's why we practice. So the qualities of our optimal breath. We used to describe this as our best breath, and I shifted that because I don't think there's a best and a worst breath. There's the kind of breath that makes us feel really good, and there's a kind of breath that makes us feel fearful or scattered. And what we want is more of the breath that makes us feel good. So that quality of breath is going to be natural. It's effortless. This is the way you're breathing when you're in the zone, when you're journaling, when you're walking through the forest, when you're reading, when you're doing yoga. It's effortless and easeful. You're not striving. It's calm. It's unhurried. It's nurturing. And it might even be precious. And the qualities of a breath that's out of balance, it might be edgy or anxious. It could be frenetic, agitated or irritated. It might be unsettled, irregular, rapid, or skittish. When your breath is in that state, it's sending you a message. It's communicating. I mean, it's a conversation. And it's asking you to listen and tune in. So we're going to do a practice, and I already have 22 minutes past the hour. So I had a feeling that we would have way more content than we would be able to fit in an hour. So when it's half past the hour, we'll just pause there and we'll pick up where we left off next week, and we'll make up the time next week because I don't want to have to rush through. So let's take a first practice together. Just finding any comfortable seat. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. It doesn't have to be anything formal. It just has to feel good in your body. So maybe that's kind of on your chair, feet grounded, soles of the feet touching the ground. You could put your hands on your thighs, or maybe find a gentle bend in your elbows. Or if it feels good, you could leave your palms in your lap with the palms facing upward, one on top of the other. You can lean back against a chair if that feels supportive. Just let your spine be nice and tall, like there's a light behind your heart. And really soften your face. You can close your eyes in meditation if that feels good, or if you prefer, you can leave them just kind of gently, softly half open. Softening your shoulders. Notice any tension that might be hanging out in your jaw, and soften that as well. And just start to bring some awareness to your breath, just as it is. Don't change anything. You don't have to manipulate it. Just notice how your breath is right now on this Thursday morning in your 920 body. Notice. And now start to focus on the sensation of the breath via the inhale and the exhale. Just noticing how it feels in your body. And then maybe start to investigate the quality of your breath. How does it feel to you? Is it cool or warm? Is it heavy or thin? Is it frenetic or skittish? Or smooth and calm? Is it rough or jagged? Is it slow and confident? Just start to notice, remembering whatever you're finding is not good or bad. It just is. Continuing to really let things be as they are. Notice if the sensation of the breath has changed. Focus now on where your breath is landing. Where do you feel the breath touching down in your body? It might be the upper chest or your nostrils, the back of your throat, the middle chest or your heart. It could be your belly, your navel. It might be different for each one of us, and that's okay. Just exploring with curiosity the shape and the quality, the location of this particular September 30th breath. This breath that will never be. This breath that is unique to this moment in time. And then finally, notice if you're having any feelings about your breath. What kind of feeling tones might those be? Are they pleasant? Are they unpleasant? Are they neutral? Wherever your feeling tones on that continuum might be, that's okay. Again, just noticing with curiosity. Isn't that interesting? This is how my breath feels right now. In this moment, this is how it feels to be me. Sitting in stillness here for just a few breaths longer. As you're ready, and only when you're ready, feel free to come out of the meditation. Slowly easing back into this moment, coming into your senses. And now just notice, how did that feel in your body? Can you offer any adjectives that describe the quality of your breath in that meditation?
I still noticed the shallowness that I didn't before.
Did the shallowness change over the course of the meditation, or did it stay the same throughout?
The breath became deeper as I relaxed more into it.
Mm-hmm. There's
Yeah,
such a connection. Go
I
ahead,
would
Sean.
agree, I would totally agree with the similar feeling. So like I was aware of, I think like a shortness or a stressful breath, like not in a medical way, but just, I just kind of realized that in the moment, and then had to, focus on elongating breath. And then at a certain point, I kind of stopped hearing what you were saying and just got really, really relaxed.
Sounds like being in the zone.
Yeah. I would say my breath was shorter, like it wasn't traveling as deeply into like my body as I wanted it to. So like I had a lot of like judgment very early on. But I was trying, I was intentionally not taking deeper breaths. Like I was just trying to explore like what was happening instead of slowing it down with intention. But I found that the more I explored and the more I was completely present with the breath, it did naturally regulate to what I would call like a, I know better is not the best word to use, but like a more comfortable and more easeful cadence.
It's hard not to want to manipulate it, isn't it? To feel like, okay, this
I
is
had to
how my
resist,
breath
yeah.
should be like. Come on, body, do it.
Yeah.
For me, it was a little hitchy at the beginning, and then it felt smoother towards the end. I have a hard time just focusing on my breath. And so I kept going to my thoughts and then trying to bring them back to focusing on my breath. So that's my struggle that I'm looking forward to working on.
It sounds like you perfectly meditated. That's what Sharon Salzberg is. She's kind of the theme of today's session, because I think all the time of what she says about how the meditation begins when you get lost. When you notice that your mind is thinking and you come back, that it really begins in the return. And so that's an essential part. And I think of the analogy of your mind being like a puppy in the yard, right? And you know how excited that puppy is to get out the back door, and you open it 3 inches and that puppy squeezes out and starts running around the backyard. This is the mind. right? And so we have to really gently just call it back in and bring it in and snuggle it up, say, hey, let's come back and try again. And there's something about puppies that I think especially has a lightness and a sweetness that can help us to maybe, if we can look at our minds in the same way, then we can find some softness around this instead of judging it. So I think we'll pause there for today because I have that we're past half past. And we still have 2 practices to go in this first series, and I want to make sure we don't have to rush them. And since we did start today with some orientation kind of material, that's why we have a little left to do the next series. But if that's okay with you, we'll just pick up right here next Thursday at 8:30 a.m.
Thank you so much, Rachel. This is so beautiful.
This is so fun. I'm just so grateful to get this time with you all, especially because being 6 hours ahead means I don't get as much one-on-one, like live human being time. So it really feels like a treat to get this time and to know that there's more of it. So thank you for bringing your whole selves.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Have a great day, everyone.
You
All right.
too. Yeah. Enjoy the day, and I'll see you guys all soon.
All right, bye, guys.
Bye. Do a big exhale after I end the call. Okay.
Figure out how to make the button make that sound.
Yeah. Let's work on it.
Take good care.
Bye.